Hello and welcome to my presentation for my print and play. So in front of us here we have all of my elements. I have my print and play in completion here before it's been cut out. I have my fully cut out and ready to play print and play here, and then I have a few concept bits here. So I will first get into the theme of my print and play. So the theme is a medieval theme. It was inspired by the likes of Game of Thrones and Skyrim. So I originally planned to have a mythical element like those games and show do. However, I ran into trouble with adding a mythical creature such as dragons or giants to the armies, because during my playtesting I couldn't really balance the combat, so I had to sort of scrap that idea. So I've gone for just a simple medieval theme with no mythical elements. So I've portrayed this theme within my different cards and aspects of my print and play. So with my loot card here, it's in the design of a chest. So I've picked things that were around during the medieval period. I have, for my tokens, my meeples, they're represented by a sword and shield. And then the places of interest, or points of interest, are castles and villages. For my scenario cards, the inspiration I used was the scenario itself. So here we have numerous different scenarios. We have 6 in total. This one here is representing the blizzard scenario. This one is representing the heat wave, then earthquake, plague, normal day, and then solar eclipse. So I thought I'd use those scenarios, have them on the front, and then we'll turn this card over. This is the earthquake card, so it takes the design on the front and uses it for the whole card. Now I'll quickly go through my digital element on Twine and go through the inspiration and how, again, I've portrayed my theme. So here we have the title screen, Medieval Madness. We have 3 different options. We have start game, story, dice roll. Click on story. It is just a quick little backstory and reason as to why you'd play the game. Here we have a dice roll. So if you can't, find any dice, you don't have the correct dice, as you need 5 different type, then they're all here. You can reset, or you can roll numerous different dice depending on the game. And then we have the start game tab, and here we have all of the different scenarios. The background, as you can tell, is just a sort of a medieval city with a castle, the main theme of the game. Each one has its own theme. So this is sort of a medieval town, kind of with snow, because it is a blizzard. And then here we just have a bit of parchment. And it's the same for each and every one. Earthquake, and the effects also help portray the theme of each different scenario. Again, parchment, and so on. Okay, back to the physical element of the print and play now. I am going to explain the rules and the gameplay whilst also showing the setup. So the main objective of the game, as stated in the rulebook, is to eliminate your opponents by claiming their castle and killing all their soldiers. And to do this, you travel around the map, you loot villages along the way to gain useful items, which you can then use as a competitive advantage. So we have the gameplay overview. So essentially, to start the game, each player will roll the same dice. Whoever rolls the highest goes first, and then you go clockwise from there. So each player gets 3 actions per turn. 2 actions can be used to move, and 1 action can be used for either looting or attacking an enemy. And at the end of the player's turn, they can place their meeples within their corner of the board, their quadrant. And then after all players have had their go and the round is over, you then draw a scenario card. And then the next round, or 2 rounds, or 3 rounds, depending on how long the scenario card lasts for, you must follow those specific rules. You then repeat this until there's 1 player standing. The next thing to look at in the rulebook is the components page, which we have here, which lists all the different items you need. And then we have the map setup, which directs you to where you need to place each specific token, as well as the scenario cards, loot cards, resource and village tokens, and then the game end conditions, which are the game only ends when there's one player left on the board. This means all other players have been eliminated, as their castle has been claimed by someone else and all of their meeples have been killed. The single player alive claims the win. And then finally, we have a description of the player pawns, the meeples, and then how the fighting mechanic works, which I will explain during the mini playthrough of the game. Now we will get on to the setup of the game. So now we will use the map setup and the description at the bottom to figure out where each piece goes. So we'll look for number 1, which I know is the, as it says here, resource tokens. There's 12. If you're unsure what each piece is, you always have your components page, which shows you. So we're looking for the resource token, which is this one here. So that will be this little piece there. So we have to place 12 of those. So on the map, you can see number 1 points to any square with the little blue R. So we'll quickly place those on there. Now what you can do, which I have not done, is you can always tape the map together along the seams just to stop it from moving around. But as this is just an example, I have not done that, so I can show you it separated. But I do recommend you do that. Now that is the first part of the setup done. Next, we have to place the 20 village tokens. Again, if you're unsure what the village token is, just check the components page. So now we will put them on the map. If you find number 2 down here, it points to all the squares with the little church slash village. And for any tokens that overlap across 2 squares, that means you can add on either one to claim the square, the village. And now we're on to step 3, which is each player places their castle tokens on their starting square, which if we look number 3 here, it's pointing to the different castle squares. So each player puts their castle on their corresponding coloured square. So the black one goes down here, the green one goes down here, blue one in the top right, and then the red one in the top left up here. And then finally, each player must place their pawn on their starting square. And again, in the components page, the player pawn is labelled, it's the one with the crown. So we'll put it just on top of the castle that we have just placed down now, as the castle stays there until a player has taken over that kingdom. And that is that. The map setup is complete. All the places are where they need to be. And now we can get on to the example game as I explain my inspiration and my planning process to get to the point I am at. Now that the map is set up, we are almost ready to start. But before we do, we need to make sure we have our resource cards there. We need to make sure our loot cards are shuffled, as well as our scenario cards. Now, before we get into the actual game, I was going to show my the process that I took to get to this stage. So we'll start with the map. So initially, I had the concept of my map sketched up here. Originally, I had all the castles and the resource tokens drawn on, but they were in random spots, and I thought it probably makes the most sense if everything is symmetrical, so it's a fair game. I then moved on from the sketch to a physical board, which I then laid out everything out as you can see on the actual board. And with the loot card, I started off with a very basic sort of stencil that I then used. So I have the name at the top, a picture, and then the description, which as you can see here is the final product. And then finally we have the scenario card, which is the same idea. It started off as just a sketch, very basic stencil, which I then use, and rather than the picture, I thought it would be easier to just have the whole design of the card almost be the picture. Now the physical aspect of the game is ready. We then need to make sure we have our digital aspect. So we'll get that on the screen now. Due to the nature of the video and how little time I have, I've decided to start the game from a scenario. So I'll explain it quickly. Here we have the red player's pawn with 2 meeples. He has 1 meeple there and 1 meeple there. And the green team, he's got 1 meeple on his base, 1 meeple here controlling this 3x3 grid, another meeple here, and then their pawn and 1 meeple there. And along the way, they have collected, they've looted villages and collected resource tokens. So red player has 2 different loot cards, 1 resource token. Green player has 2 loot cards and 2 resource tokens. So I'm going to play on behalf of both players. So I will start off as the red player. So they now get 2 actions to move and 1 to loot. And I was inspired to use this form or this mechanic rather than a dice roll based off playing Mansions of Madness, which I did in the first 2 weeks of this module. I thought it's different, it's unique, and it allows me to use the dice roll mechanic in a different part of the game without it feeling repetitive. So what the red player will do is move their pawn and meeples. So when you have meeples with your pawn, they move with your pawn. So we're going to move twice. We'll go 1, 2. So we are on top of that green meeple. And now what this means, if we look in the rule book when it comes to fighting, so the red team has 3,000 soldiers, 2 meeples and a pawn, so they get to roll the 8-sided dice, and the green team have just a singular 1,000, so they roll the 4-sided. Whoever rolls the highest wins. So we will roll the defending team's die first, so we'll roll the 4 player, and that has landed on 2. Then next we will roll the 8-sided die. There we go. It's also a 2. As it is a draw, you will both re-roll. So we'll go with the defending team first, a 4. Now the attacking team, a 5. So as the attacking team won, that means that meeple is dead. They have now been eliminated, and they get to stay where the meeple was. With my fighting mechanic, I actually drew inspiration from the board game Risk. I like the idea of, depending on how many soldiers you had, depended on the sort of level of dice that you rolled. I think it makes the game a bit more interesting. The fighting can be interesting because even though it may be a 5v1, 5,000 versus 1,000, it's still possible for you to win, which I like. Now it is the green team's turn, and what they are going to do is just move twice, 1, 2, to try and move closer to the red team's castle. Now that the round is ended, we must take the scenario card. So we've already shuffled, so we take the top card, and here we have Heatwave. So this is when we incorporate the digital element. We will click on Heatwave, and as you can see here, it comes up with a description of the event and the rules you must follow. So now we'll put this card at the bottom of the pile, and we are ready to start the next round. So the next round has started. Now both teams move their meeples 1 spot, and then we go straight to the next round because there's already a scenario active. Now green is in range of fighting red, so they use their weapon card, so they get to use 2 dice rolls if they lose the first. They did lose both dice rolls, so that means they lose their meeple and have to move their pawn back directly 4 spaces towards their base.